Okay, so our player's able to attack and they can run everywhere and they've got stamina and all this stuff, but I think the movement's missing just one little thing in my opinion, and that's the double jump. It's one of my favorite mechanics in any game, and I think it'd be fun to add it here. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and open our player script back up, and here at the bottom of our variables, we're gonna add another one. This time it's going to be a public boolean, and we're gonna call it double jump. And we're going to give it a default value of true, not false. This is because sometimes, or the code we're going to use to activate our double jump is only going to work if the player is falling and then touches the ground. By default, the player is not going to be on the ground, or not falling, they're going to start on the ground, which means we won't have a chance to set this to true unless we set it to true here. So we'll start by setting double jump to true. And then what we'll do is we'll drop down into our grounded player code here, into this if conditional. And we're going to say if the player is falling and they're grounded, we want to then set double jump to true. This means that when the player uses their double jump and we set that value to false, the only way they can get their double jump back is to land. Next, what we're going to do is drop to where we're checking for their jump input, and we're going to add an else if statement. Else ifs are basically just if statements that are only called if the top if isn't true. So in this case, if the player either didn't hit the button or they aren't grounded, it'll then check this else if. So we're actually just going to copy this if or input and the and sign there and just paste it down into our new conditional. And then we're going to say not grounded player. This will only be true if grounded player is set to false. That's what this little exclamation point does. It essentially gets us the opposite value of a Boolean. So if we hit the jump button and the player is not grounded and their double jump is set to true, then we want to do a couple things. We want to set the player velocity to y, set the player's y velocity to 0. And then we're actually just going to copy our jump velocity thing here and paste it below. The reason we're setting it to 0 is that if the player is falling, their velocity is going to be negative. And if we add a value to a negative number, we're going to get a smaller value than if we added it to 0. So we want it to set to 0 so that the player always gets the full value out of their jump height. And then lastly, we just got to set double jump to false. So that's all we need. As long as we have this value assigned here and it's set to false here, then we know that when the player jumps, they can't jump again, and when they land, they get it back. So we're going to save our script, and then we're going to hop back over to our game and test it out. And you should see that if you jump once and jump again, no matter if you're falling or going up, you'll always get the same height out of your second jump. And if you try to jump a million times, it won't quite work that way.